So let's talk about diversity in the living world. Coming to this topic of diversity in the living world, so let's see. So, biology. So, what is biology? Biology is the science of life forms and living processes. Biology is the science of life forms and living processes. So, it deals with all kinds of plants and animals. So, coming to the branch of biology that deals with plants, we call it as botany. So, botany is the branch of biology that deals with plants. And next, coming to zoology. Zoology is the science that deals with animals. And we have other sciences like that. And in this entire thing, you are going to study about microbiology also, means microbes. So we call that science as microbiology, which deals with microorganisms. Coming to the description of living organisms, including human beings, began much later in human history. So societies which indulge in anthropocentric view of biology, like registered limited process of biological knowledge and systematic and monumental description of life, forms bot. So detailed system of identification. First remember this sequence in this chapter. First thing is we have to identification, and next thing is nomenclature, and we have classification. Coming to the biggest spin of such studies was recognized by sharing the similarities among living organisms, both horizontally as well as vertically. That all present day living organisms are related to each other. So, that was ever lived on earth. Means mainly we are considering the phylogenetic system of classification. Phylogenetical way of classification. So let's talk about Ernst Mayr. So he is the one who is born in 5th July 1904. He was born in 1904, and he was the university, he studied in the Harvard University and in evolutionary biologist. He is an evolutionary biologist. And he's been called as Darwin of 20th century. So was one of the 100 greatest scientists of all time, Ernst Mayr, and he made the contribution in taxonomy. Mainly, you have to remember him in the contribution of taxonomy, geo, geography, means geological distribution of animals, evolution, and systematics, and history and physiology, philosophy of biology, history, philosophy of biology. He also pioneered the currently accepted definition of biological species. So, biological species definition. Coming to the topic of, so what is biological definition? Species definition is, so the species which are similar in morphology, anatomy and looking very similar, which can able to interbreed among themselves. Those we call it as the same species. And species are considered as a unit of classification. So the living world, coming to this chapter, we have incredible number of diverse and fascinating organisms. Living world are found like wherever life is possible. They are found in cold climates. Even you can see the thermophile bacteria in very cold climatic these are, and we have the polar bears, forest, oceans, lakes, deserts, hot springs. Okay, all these organisms are important to us. So, the beauty of galloping horses, the migrating birds, the valley of flowers, and attacking sharks, these are the things you will be seeing in NCRT, right? Evokes awe and deep sense of wonder, the ecological conflict, and cooperation among the members of population and among the population of the community. Even the molecular traffic inside the cell makes us deeply reflect on what indeed of life means, what is the need of life. So, indeed, to answer this question, you should know the difference between first thing living and non living. So, in this, let's see about living and non living. So, what is living? Both living and non living things make up the basic elements, made up with basic elements like. So, next, first thing is what is living? Both living as well as non living are mainly made up of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen. Okay, in your in biomolecules, you will get sulfur as well as phosphorus. These 6 elements are the first major elements. Out of this, all the organisms are made up of the first 4 elements. So they are used in a same physical law as gravitation, radiation, magnetism. Still, living organisms are different from non-living things in some fundamental characters. To define living, we have to list the distinctive characteristics exhibited by the living organisms, right? So they are none other than, so let's see the difference between living and non-living. Coming to the thing, first thing living and second thing non-living. First thing is living, right? So in living, cellular organization, present, because each and every organism are made up of a basic unit called cell. Even a cell can live individually as unicellular organisms, but non-living, no. Coming to the next thing, metabolism. In metabolism, the living, yes, you have anabolism, catabolism, but when it comes to non-living, no. Growth, yes. Non-living also, yes, but growth is from outside. Here growth is from inside. Reproduction, yes, but no here. Consciousness, it is very complicated thing to make us to understand. Yes for living and no for non-living. Ability to self-replicate, ability of self-replication, yes, but no here. Non-living will not. Interact and emergence, yes, right, but here it is no. right? So only thing that is matching is the growth, but that too the growth is entirely different. Here the growth is because of metabolic process, here the growth is by accumulation process. So coming to the characteristic of living organisms, so let's start with the very first thing, that is growth. So coming to the growth, all the living organisms will grow. It is an internal biological process controlled by protoplasm. Growth is permanent and it is irreversible. So the change in size of the cell or an organ or a whole organism, it is usually accompanied by increase in dry weight. So increase in mass, increase in number of cells. So if you see, increase in mass and increase in number of cells are usually the twin characteristics of growth. So increase in mass and increase in number of individuals. So like if you can see, so to this you should be very clear. Coming to the point, growth plus reproduction. Reproduction. These both are inclusive features. Of unicellular organisms. But when it comes to higher plants and animals, growth plus reproduction, they both are exclusive events. So coming to the multicellular organisms, the growth in size will happen by cell division. So in plants, the growth in cell division continuously throughout their lifespan. So growth up to certain age for animals, growth throughout life. Plants. So in animals, the growth will be seen up to only certain age. But the cell division will occur when there is any repair. When there is any repair, at that time also the cell division will occur. So to replace the lost cells, unicellular organisms will grow by cell division. So one can easily observe that in vitro cultures by simply counting the number of cells under the microscope. In the majority of higher plants and animals, growth and reproduction are mutually exclusive events. We have seen here, and one must remember that increase in body mass is considered as a growth. So increase in body mass is considered as growth, right? Non-living things also exhibit growth. So how the growth in non-living things? So they will increase in size by increase in size. Weight of mountains, like boulders, sand mounds, Such an increase in non-living object is none other than the deposition of matter from outside. So we call this is known as accretion. So this deposition you call it as accretion. And let's talk about the growth of living organisms due to increase in of matter but from inside the surface. So growth is therefore a characteristic of organism but not a defining property of living organisms. So growth is a character but not defining character. Right? Next. Coming to the next thing, reproduction. Coming to the point of reproduction, in multicellular organisms, reproduction refers to none other than the production of progeny possessing the features more or less similar to those of parents. So, invariably and implicitly, we refer to sexual reproduction. Organisms reproduce by asexually also. So, reproduction you have to consider two things, sexual as well as asexual. Coming to the sexual things, so all the organisms will reproduce sexual, including the bacteria. Fungi will multiply very rapidly as many million asexual spores. We call that asexual spores. If you see asexual fungi, we call it as conidia. Certain lower organisms will reproduce. So yeast, if you take yeast, they'll reproduce by budding. Even you can see budding in hydra also. Budding. And if you take bacteria, binary fission. And next, paramecium. Transverse binary fission. Euglena. Trypanosoma. These are longitudinal binary fission. And if you see the very importantly, planaria. Regeneration. They are the masters of regeneration. So fragmented, one organism regenerates its lost body part and other fragment will form into a new head. Means two fragments will form into two different organisms. So you can see the protonema in mosses. In mosses, fragmentation of protonema. And in pteridophytes, it is prothallus. So, however, the unicellular bacteria, unicellular algae or amoeba reproduce synonymously with growth. So, that is why we call it as increase in cell or mass. However, there are many organisms, they do not reproduce like mules. Mule came from male donkey and female horse. This is interspecific hybridization. And next we have the tigon. Male tiger, female lion. Liger, male lion, female tiger. And you can see the sterile worker bees. And we have the infertile human couple. Etc. Hence, reproduction cannot be all inclusive defining character. Yet, reproduction is essential for continuity of any race on earth of majority of organisms. So, reproduction. This is also only characteristic feature. No defining characteristic feature. Next thing regarding metabolism. Coming to the metabolism, all organisms are made up of chemicals, and these chemicals, it may be small or big, belonging to various classes, sizes and function, constantly being made or changed to some other biomolecules. The conversion of chemical reactions are metabolic reactions. They are the thousands of metabolic reactions that occur simultaneously inside all unicellular or multicellular organisms. So the sum and total of all the chemical reactions in the body, we call it as metabolism. Sum of total chemical reactions. In living organisms. All plants, animals, fungi, microbes exhibit metabolism. No non-living things will exhibit metabolism. So metabolism can be demonstrated in cell-free systems also. An isolated metabolic reaction outside the body of an organism. So performed in the test tube, it can be neither living nor non-living. So metabolic reaction outside cell, which means you can also call it as cell-free system, which is neither living nor non-living. Metabolism is a defining feature of all living without exception. You can call the metabolism as metabolism as living characteristic feature, that too defining characteristic feature. So here metabolism is defining characteristic feature. So while metabolism is a defining characteristic feature without exception, but isolated metabolic reactions in vitro are not living things, but surely a living reaction. We call it as a living reaction, but those are not a living things. Okay, we can call it as a living reaction. So let's talk about the fourth one, that is cellular organization. So since all the living organisms are made up of cells that helps in performing various cellular functions such as growth, development, reproduction, metabolism, you can see all these things it will happen in a single cell. So where no non-living things will have a made up of cells, so lack of cellular organization. So cellular organization is the defining property of living. Property of living. And next, the fifth one, consciousness. Coming to the property of consciousness, consciousness is the sense of the surroundings. Or environment, respond to that environment stimuli, which may be physical, chemical, biological. One of the most obvious and technical complicated features of all the living organisms. You cannot explain consciousness exactly. We sense our environment through our sense organs. Plant responds to the external factors like light, temperature, water, and other organisms respond to the environmental cues. Like photoperiod affect the reproduction in seasonal breeders, right? So both plants and animals, all organisms can handle the chemicals entering into their bodies. So all organisms therefore aware of their surroundings. So that means human beings are the only organisms who are aware of themselves. So human beings are the only thing who have self consciousness. So, therefore, this consciousness can be defined as defining property. However, patients lying on the coma in hospitals, they are virtually supported by machines when replace heart and lungs in state of suspended consciousness. The patient in living but has no self-consciousness, loss of coordination between the organs. So all living phenomena are due to underlying interactions, like properties of the tissues are not present in constituent cells but arise as a result of interaction among the cells. So the property of cell organelles are not present in the molecular constituents of the organelle but arise due to interaction among the molecular components. So the interaction results in emergent property of higher level organisms. This is the true in the hierarchy of organization of complexity of all levels. Therefore you can say living organisms are self-replicating, they are evolving, they are self-regulating, interacting, self-replicating, self-evolving and self-evolving interactive system are capable of respond to external stimuli. Therefore, the story of life on earth, biology is the story of evolution of living organisms on earth. So all living organisms which are present, past and future are linked to one another by shared the common genetic material but to varying degree. So this is all about the properties of living as well as non-living. So finally you can define the living organisms as self-replicating, evolving, self-regulating, interactive, capable of respond to external stimuli. So, biology is none other than the story of life on earth and the story of evolution. So, this is all about the defining characteristic features of living.